This is the second part to Expert Chimps. If you haven't seen the first part, all of the info for every episode will be in the pinned comment. Moving on, the first thing that we're going to look at is part 8, which is making your own strategy with Dorio.
Everyone, it's me, Dorio, and I am here to teach you guys how to make your own expert black border strategies. I've outlined a few basic steps that should be able to help you. Step 1. Pick a map and learn map specifics, like how to start, early games, and mid-game strategies. Some examples of this are spiked balls on Ravine, bads on Sanctuary, and other things like that. The easiest way to learn these map specifics, in my opinion, is to just look at a few black border runs that already exist on YouTube, or the previous part that Chom has made, which probably contains them, because he did do a look at each map. Step 2. Pick 1 to 2 tier 5s that you want to get. If you get 2, make sure one of them is fairly cheap, and a hero to pair with it. For most expert maps, I would only recommend getting 1 tier 5, and then overloading on support. 2 main tier 5s can work, but usually it's just harder. But for easier experts, 2 tier 5s is usually fine, and if you are getting 2 tier 5s, one of them should be a cheap mid-game tier 5, like Elite Sniper, Elite Defender, or Prince of Darkness, or a cleanup tier 5, like a Prince of Darkness, Bloon Solver, or Permaspike. Or it could also be a support tier 5, like a Super Brittle, Super Glue, or Icicle Impale. If you really want to, you can theoretically get more tier 5s, but it's usually just not worth it, and support is usually better. Step 3. Pick a mid-game plan. The mid-game is the most important part of Expert Chimps runs, and it is probably the most nuanced and complicated part as well. There are a few general mid-game towers that can work pretty well in many circumstances, but on harder experts, you want to be using map-specific mid-games because they are usually better. Some general mid-games that can work in many scenarios are Bads, Spiked Mines, Carrier Flagship, which is strong but RNG-based, Robo-Monkeys, or one of the mid-game tier 5s I mentioned earlier. There are also some specialized mid-game towers, like for some specifically anti-Moab defense, you might want to use something like an Alk-buffed May Moab or a Dark Knight. There are also anti-ceramic mid-games. You could use something like an Alk-buffed Bouncing Bullet, a Recursive, or a Storm Druid, or maybe even a Morglaves. There are also some hero-specific mid-games, like if you're using Striker, an Assassin can be a pretty good Moab counter because he buffs them a lot. And if you use Oben, Storm Druids and Dark Knights are even better than they normally are. Depending on how much you want to save up and what the tier 4 of the tier 5 you want is, you might want to use a combination of the mid-game towers mentioned. Like some normal combos are a Spiked Mines and a May Moab, or like a Dark Knight and a Storm Druid. Other things like that, like 1 Moab counter and 1 Ceramic counter, or 1 General counter and 1 of any of the other ones. Usually it'll work. As I said earlier, on harder expert maps, you want to be using more map-specific mid-games, but these towers I've just mentioned can still be good on those maps too. Mid-games are more complicated than this, however. This is just a general guide. If I wanted to mention every single scenario where you would use towers not mentioned here or like different combinations, it would literally take a few hours. Step 4. Go actually play the game and try to do what you've planned. This step is pretty simple, except during this step, you just have to figure out an early game, which can just be figured out by watching videos on YouTube and using your knowledge on early game towers, which I kind of mentioned in step 1. If you lose a few times during this step, it's okay. Just try to adjust a little bit until you figure it out. But if you find that you really need to adjust your strategy big time, try it, see how it works. Most of making a good black border strategy is testing. Trust me, I would know. Step 5. Once you've afforded your main tier 5, get supports. Supports really all fall into a few main categories: Moab support, ceramic support, and general support. DDT support is kind of like a subsection of general support. Some good Moab supports are an Alk-buffed May Moab, Moab Glue, Moab Presses, and a Concoction. Concoction is pretty strategy dependent though. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it actually hurts your defense. Some good ceramic supports are Storm Druids, Bloon Impacts, or something like an Arctic Wind. And finally, some good general supports are Relentless Glue, Sabotage, Alk buffs, upgrading that Arctic Wind to a Snowstorm if you really need the ability, an MIB if you need lead popping, and Overclock. But Overclock is pretty strategy dependent, and it only really works well with Mob Domination, Dark Champion, Inferno Ring, and Apache Prime. Outside of that, Overclock isn't that useful. The best way to see what supports you need is just playing rounds until you die, and then using retry last round if you lose. And take note of what you die to. If you die to Moabs, get Moab support, and if you die to Ceramics, get Ceram support. And if you die to DDTs, get DDT support. Step 6. Round 100 is very important. Don't forget about it. Just use the round 100 solutions that Chom talked about in episode 5 of this series. It tells you everything you need to know. If you follow these steps, you should be able to make strategies to beat expert maps, and just to prove that it works, I will do it on Workshop. The tier 5 I will be picking as my main DPS is the newly buffed Bomb Blitz, and I will also get a Permaspike for DDTs and cleanup. Striker is the hero of choice here because he buffs both massively, and I'll use a Spiked Mines mid-game because it just crushes Workshop, and I'll also get an Assassin because Spiked Mines need a little bit more anti-Moab defense, and I'm using Striker. The late game support can be improvised though. Let's get into the run and my testing. Okay, so first in the run I start off with 3 Dart Monkeys, which is pretty standard for Workshop, and then I get a 4th. That's kind of standard for Workshop. Sometimes you get it, sometimes you don't. Here I decided to. And then on round 10 I got an Engineer. I plan to get this guy to a Sentry Gun later, and he'll serve as just a nice little early game tower to carry me until about round 30. And then I go for a somewhat unconventional early game tower. I get a base Spike Factory at the back. This is especially useful because it deals with every single camo up to 40, and I'm getting Spiked Mines anyway, so it's just a cost-efficient option to make sure I don't overspend on random things that I don't need. And then I upgrade that Engineer to a Sentry Gun, which is what I said I'd do. And then I get Striker on 19. Normally you can get your hero earlier, but since I went for a bit more of an expensive early game solution, and Striker isn't too great early game, I decided to get him a bit later than normal. So, yeah. After that, I go for my main early game carry, which is a 130 Druid of the Jungle. This guy crushes single lane maps, and Workshop is a single lane map. He'll deal with every single lead and basically everything else. He's just a good pick. And then, for round 40, I decide to go with an Alk buffed Spiked Balls, because I'm getting a Spiked Mines anyway, so why not? I use a Striker ability and use one of the Workshop things. If you're not on Workshop, an Alk buffed Spiked Balls with a Striker stun, or like any other hero ability, should be able to solo round 40, so you shouldn't really have to worry about that. And then after, I go straight for a Spiked Mines, using a few more Striker abilities sometimes, and even having, well, I didn't actually have to use the Workshop extensions, but it probably would have helped because it got very close here. And I even died in one of my tests, so yeah, I probably should have used a Workshop thing. If you're trying to make a strat 100% consistent, test any round you die to, like, many times just to see if you can get it consistent with the towers you have by doing specific things like changing targetings, messing with ability timings, or in this case, using a Workshop like motor. And then after that, I finally afforded the Spiked Mines on round 48, so I then went for the rest of my mid-game setup, which was going to be a recursive cluster, which I need to build into the Bomb Blitz, and I'll Alk buff it, because Alk buffing the Bomb Blitz later will be nice. And then I get that Mob Assassin I talked about for a little bit of extra mob damage, because recursive isn't too great at dealing with those. And here I also use a tactic that I personally like to use a lot in my runs, which is pre-placing all of the base towers that I am going to upgrade, just to make sure that I can pack them as tightly together as possible, and so I'm not really wasting space. On maps like Workshop, this shouldn't be too much of an issue unless you're like actually spamming stuff. But yeah, I personally just like to pre-place the base towers and then upgrade them later, just to make sure I have enough space for everything. Sometimes it can lose a tiny bit of money, but money isn't usually tight, so it's not too big of an issue. If money is tight, don't pre-place towers, but if it's not tight, I would recommend it. I do get a primary mentoring for some reason. I guess I really wanted the free tier 1s and maybe a little bit more range on the bomb blitz. Weird pick, but I guess it worked. Money wasn't tight at all in this run. So yeah, I finally get the Alk buff recursive cluster, and then I get the assassin. And then this setup is strong enough to take me all the way past round 63, where I did have to use a striker ability. I used multiple, but you really only should need... usually we'll be using hero abilities on 63, because 63 is a pretty tough round. Yeah, most mid-game save-ups should either end before 75, or if you have a much stronger mid-game setup, you should be able to beat 75, and you should ideally get your main tier 5 before round 80. Here I decided to get it before 75 because I figured that would work. Except I did my math wrong, so I didn't actually get the bomb blitz in the middle of 75. I actually got it on 76. So yeah, we like to do math over here. Yeah. If you do your math right, you should be able to. There's a really good website that can help you with this. It's called topper64.co.uk. Hopefully Chom puts it in the description because it is super, super nice. Or just the CyberQuincy Discord bot. But yeah, once I've gotten the Bomb Blitz, I won't go for the Permaspike straight away because Bomb Blitz isn't that strong. So I'll just get a little bit of support to help it out a little bit. Just a Moab Glue. That's all I'll really need. And then I go for the Permaspike. I put it here so it's in range of Striker's plus 25% Pierce buff. And I decided to go the top crosspath instead of the middle, even though it's worse, because my Alchemist might not AMD the Permaspike all of the time, and I need it to always hit DDTs. And the top crosspath is just slightly more consistent for that. Once I've afforded the Permaspike on round 88, I think it was, yeah, it was 88. Once I afforded the Permaspike on 88, I start getting a little bit more ZOMG support because, as you can see, the Bomb Blitz is kind of struggling right now. Letting things get to the Spiked Mines pile only on 88, so I'm going to need a bit more ZOMG support. The easiest solution here is just a Moab Press, which I do end up getting, and I also get a Relentless Glue just to help out a little bit with the cleanup. And then I even get a second Moab Press, mostly because it's Workshop. But yeah, this setup with a Relentless Glue, some Moab Presses, and whatever tier 5 you have should let you survive a very long time. You will want to be using hero abilities ideally, but sometimes you don't want to, which is kind of reasonable. But with most strats, you will be having to constantly use hero abilities. So make sure to test that out and see like when you need to use it and stuff. Yeah. This let me save up all the way to my round 100 solution, which I decided was going to be a Moab Eliminator. Works pretty well with Striker because Striker can just refresh it and make it do double damage. Kinda strong, I'd say. And yeah, I already had the Moab Assassin, so why not get the Eliminator as well? Permaspike already basically solos round 100, but I want it to be a little bit overkill. I even use a Workshop thingy just to make it work better. And the Moab Eliminator one-shot the bad insides. This is my example of how to make your own strategy. You gotta pick an early game, pick a mid game, pick a late game, and do all the stuff in between to make it work. And also test it a lot before you actually try to black border it. Testing is the key to making a good strategy that works consistently.
Thank you for that one. Now we're going to be looking at part 9, which is strategy 4 with Derp Skull.
Hey there everyone, you're stuck with me now. I am going to showcase you guys why Flagship is kinda crazy for black bordering maps, despite its shortcomings. And by shortcomings, I mostly mean its inconsistency. So I thought, hey, why not show how to patch those inconsistencies and really take advantage of all of Flagship's strengths? And one of its biggest strengths is, of course, its ability to create extra placement space on water. So I thought, hey, why not showcase that on a map that's basically all water in Flooded Valley? So we're just going to start the game with 2 subs. And from there, we'll just get a sniper and then go straight to flag. Now, when I say flag is inconsistent, what I mean is that the way the planes fly every round is more or less random, which can leave a lot of problems in your run, especially since the planes will not be attacking when they're flying away from their targets. So, there will be some times where you'll leak a couple things because the planes flew away from them at the wrong time or whatever. If flag was always attacking with the planes, it would be by far the strongest tower in the entire game. And it really wouldn't be close either. But that's not how flag works, so unfortunately we have to deal with the inconsistencies that it has. Alright, we're just gonna get Geraldo here on round 12. Geraldo is on par with Brickle as synergy for flag. The reason I want to go Geraldo here is because flag has such a problem with consistency. I think Geraldo is just the best hero for solving that issue. With all of his items, you can really work towards just solving all of the problems that flag has. Yeah, so I guess while we're playing this out, I'll go over potential problem rounds for flagship, and best ways to cover its strength. I'll go over its strengths, its weaknesses. And first strength I want to bring up is that flagship just has really high pierce. The boat in general has really good pierce. And you'll see me take full advantage of its pierce and really maximize it, which is why I'm not getting grape shots on the boat, and instead I am getting range, because the longer range upgrade gives the boat +1 pierce. 21's a problem round to save. This round is very easily solved with just a single glue. And then also I remember we were going to get crow's nest for 24. That'll be our 24 defense. This is a very good map for boat. It can really just use all of its pierce on that massive straightaway. Now the main reason you go flag with the bottom cross path is for the plane's radial darts. They will usually be hitting more frequently than the grapes, and even though the grapes technically do more damage per attack, the amount of times those grapes are going to hit is just very low. I'm going to use a glue here to beat that round. Round 27, I'm just going to put the boat to last to better maximize this pierce, because, there's a lot of balloons this round. Alright, with that, we're just going to set it back to first, and we'll go straight to Destroyer from here, and then Destroyer plus a 102 sniper will get us all the way to aircraft carrier on round 40, which will destroy the round completely. Another big strength of carrier flagship, which won't be showcased that heavily this run, is its global range. Flagship can hit anywhere on the map, which means there's really no bad spot to place it. There's obviously good spots, but the planes do essentially all of the damage of the tower, so really all that matters is, that you have the tower, and that the spots that flagship gives you are in the good spot. On this run, flagship is going to be placed in the perfect position so that we can place Taxon right on top of the track, which is the perfect spot for Taxon, and something you wouldn't normally be able to do without carrier flagship. I'm going to get faster firing on the sniper so it can deal with all of the leads in the late 30s here. Alright, we're going to get carrier for round 39. This is going to, completely destroy them out. That was close. Just because the RNG of the planes was very bad and they were barely attacking that round. And you can just see how with the radial darts, they even while the planes are flying away from their target, they can still hit it with the radial darts. Just a big reason why this cross path is just much better with flagship. Right, and from here, this is mostly just going to be a quick and easy save up. We'll get a Pickle and a Jerry fire, because flag mini planes, I believe, only do 1 damage or 2. Either way, Pickle is beneficial for the damage increase, and then the Jerry fire on top of that will just add some extra security here and make sure that the run is very consistent. Really, I believe that you only need the aircraft carrier to save all the way to flagship, but adding items like this is a good way to patch inconsistencies out of the run, and a lot of the testing I did. And when I do testing for a black border, what I'll do is I'll play the rounds over and over again, either in Sandbox or I'll use Time Machine to test and see if the run truly works, right? I'll test the round over and over again, especially if it looked close, to make sure that this tower can actually beat the round without any support. And if I find that it doesn't, I see, how much support it'll need to beat the round in its worst case scenario. Now, you could always just keep replaying the game to get better RNG in one run, but sometimes on tough runs, flagship, you don't want to kind of rely on RNG every round. Like here, this is a pretty good example, right? On 49, if I were testing, I would see, oh, I just lost to ceramics, a big group of them. Glue's not really going to do that, it might get pierce capped, but what will work is pickling to basically double, more or less double the damage of the planes. It's not really double, but it's a significant DPS increase to the plane's damage, and then a Jerry Fire, which will also have increased damage because of the pickle. And this should be enough to completely demolish the round. Yeah, and you can see here, it just wasn't even close. Now, Aircraft Carrier could just beat that round with no help. However, again, if you're going to try and do a Black Border run, you don't really have the ability to, you know, retry the round over and over again and pray for good RNG. Yeah, you can see just how this tower is, you know, only like, what, like 7k for the upgrade, and the total tower is like maybe 11k, and it's already, like, it's pretty strong for its price. I mean, I've seen aircraft carriers save to some crazy stuff. I saw it save up all the way to Superstorm on, like, high finance. It was a pretty crazy run. And with the Geraldo items to help, it's very, very good. Brickle is also great support for this tower. The Naval Tactics ability does a lot. We're going to need to use some items for 54 here. And I'm going to use a glue right here to catch any, you know, Moab insides. Geraldo's money is a very strong ceramic control option. We're going to be definitely making full use of that. Yeah, we already almost have carrier flagship. In fact, we'll get it right now. Yeah, 57. Alright, and we'll just get ready to get Bunny before round 63, which is one of Bunny's best rounds. Because of just how much pierce it has. It's just able to just demolish the waves. Alright, we'll get a Jerry Fire on 59 to deal with the leads here. Yeah, now we're just cruising along here. We have Bunny. And for 63, just for extra security, I'm going to glue the 2 exits. Yeah, and with Bunny and the glues, 63 just wasn't even a little bit close. Yeah. Alright, now we're going to use Flagship's like best friend when doing strats like this, especially on Flooded Valley, and that is Arctic Wind. And Arctic Wind will turn our 2 tower placement spots into, I mean, realistically, as many as we want. And we're going to discount all the rest of our strategy with this village right here. And I'll get jungle drums for basically everything in this strategy. We're going to get a MIB as well. So let's just get that village right here beforehand so we can plan out our space accordingly. And then we'll get the next tower that we're going to get, which is the Bloon Solver. Flag struggles a tiny bit with Saram cleanup. It struggles a lot less than some other towers. But yeah, getting a Bloon Solver here will just make sure our cleanup is consistent and working, and we should have no problems. Honestly, with Tax Zone being right on the track, being mibbed and everything, ceramic cleanup and pierce will really be our only problem. So yeah, let's get corrosive, and then for Solver, we're gonna get bigger globs. Make sure I can fit an alk near it. I can. Actually, you know what I am gonna test? With these placements, will alk buff this guy? It will. Awesome. Yeah, so you always want to alk Bloon Solver. You always want to go 5-1-0. The main reason for that is that bigger globs gives the Solver's puddles more pierce, which is very important. But Glue Splatter does not, which is why you don't really have to buy it, because Solver by itself already has a lot of pierce. So it really wouldn't make too much of a difference to buy the upgrade. And instead, you kind of want to just alk it and give it primary training, which I'm going to do a second here. And that will just give the puddles, you know, a lot of pierce. Now Jerry has these shooty turrets, which are extremely strong. Also very, very good Saran cleanup. And we're just going to kind of spam them. Like basically every time we see one in shop, we're going to buy one, because they're very good. Now I know I can make this a MIB at any time, but honestly I think it's better to wait until the 90s, because realistically I have enough lead control with the liquefier. You know what I can do though as well? I'll buy the TAC now, and I will get radar scanner. And this should help with round 78, because that round is often inconsistent. I'm gonna get perishing on this alk, because Solver actually attacks pretty fast. At the end of the day, what this run should be telling you is that Flagship is a mid-game tower. It's a mid-game tower. It'll help you save up into some other tier 5s. And it does its job of shredding the mid-game pretty well. And because it does, such good Moab damage, it actually carries over into the late game very well. It can be paired with some cool stuff. You could take advantage of its boost to Monkey Aces and do maybe like flagship Sky Shredder if you wanted to. It's an interesting strategy for Black Border. Not really a good save up there, but it is very interesting. Yeah, and you can see that Flag is dealing with these Super Srams very well. We're going to get Bloon Solver in no time. There we go. Yeah, and then now, I guess, we just get Mib. I'll make sure to keep spamming Jerry turrets as soon as they come up. And then soon we're going to start spamming Jerry Fires, but not yet because it's cost inefficient right now. We'll only start spamming Jerry Fires once they start lasting the rest of the game, which will be probably 89 is a good round to start doing it. 89 or 90. Or 91. 91's probably better, if you can wait that long. But if you start spamming an 89, it's not the end of the world. You can see as soon as we pop stuff down into smaller layers, Solver just completely cleans it up. Like it's nobody's business. Yeah, I'm going to get Mib here, because the round after this, we're going to deal with DDTs. I'm going to buy some Jerry Fires, because Geraldo's shop is about to refresh. I'll buy a Sharpening Stone. I bought that on the wrong thing. Alright, I'm back on 89. We're going to buy 3 Jerry Fires. We're going to buy Sharpening Stone on the right tower towers this time. And then I'll buy a Pickle here. And the reason I can just buy all these items is because once Geraldo levels up, his shop will refill. So see, everything's back. And now I can just buy all that stuff again. But I'll wait one round to make sure all of the 10 round items will last through the game. Don't want it expiring on round 100 because, that's an important round. Round 90 is going to be much easier than round 100. No need to over-prepare for that. And now this round 91, I will buy 3 Jerry Fires to help with our DPS here. And really, we're just going to abuse the heck out of Geraldo to beat the late game here. And you can really see how the synergy is working out here. Flagship, is doing a bunch of Moab damage. The Overdrive / Taxon will be breaking down the big balloons, and then Solver will be cleaning up all the small stuff. So, big importance is understanding the tower's strength, which for Flag is its single target and somewhat its group damage. Flag can really do everything, honestly, which is why it's such a good tower. And, understanding how to, best cover Flag's weaknesses, which is its inconsistency. So, leaks, which is why I have so much cleanup here, is because Solver is great at dealing with balloon leaks. And then we'll just make up for Flag not having great, 90s damage, with, Taxon, which will just, give it its single target that it's missing for not too expensive. And I'll just be alk buffing that Taxon. And then that will basically, more or less, be the completed setup we need to beat the map here. Look at how many buffs this Taxon has. It's crazy. Yeah, with Mib, 95, absolutely no problem. It's going to get this turret here. We're going to get these Jerry Fires. Yeah, look at that. Taxon's absolutely just shredding. Being able to be placed on the track is a big deal. Around 98 should be no problem. But because the Pierce of the balloons is just so high this round, I'm going to be ready. We'll Jerry Fire here, and I'll be ready with these males, which are a pretty good item for just clearing out massive, dense waves of balloons. So I'll place one here. Yep, and looks like that one was all I needed, because Taxon is shredding. And now that I know that Genies will last the rest of the game, I'll place 2 Genies, because they'll help deal with 99 pretty well. Got another Jerry Fire, because why not? And this should just take us the rest of the game. Alright, and then around 100. We don't quite have enough bad damage. I mean, we might with RNG, but I'm just going to put Jerry's entire spike pile on here to help catch the DDTs, just in case they get through. And then I'll get ready with a male to deal with the bad's insides. Looks like we didn't need the spikes, and there we go. Pretty easy run. Very easy to replicate. Again, just look at how many pops Flag has. Flag really is the MVP of the run. But don't forget Geraldo also helped a ton as well. Pretty good tower, I'd say. Do not underestimate this thing. Flagship really destroys. Ever since they gave it Seeking to its darts, it's really been able to shred. So yeah, hope you guys have fun using Carrier Flagship.
Thanks for the strategy showcase. Now let's move on to part 10, which is going to be optimization. So as long as your towers aren't actively terrible, your strategy, even on expert maps, can win. So if you're unable to get your strategy going, it's more likely that you just need to optimize it than that it's bad. So optimizing can involve cutting towers, saving costs, fixing cross paths, better ability timing, better placement, tower consolidation, a new approach, and if all else fails, you just might have to restart. So I made this example here on Sanctuary Chimps where all of our towers are good. We're going for a Bez, which is an expensive tower, so you need to have a good save up. But as you can see, we're on round 87, we're 5k off, and we clearly aren't going to make it. So this needs some serious optimization. And you can pause and think what could be done here to work next time. And I have a few solutions that I see, so let's check them out. We're going to be looking at particularly this clump of druids up there, that spike storm. We're going to be looking at the camo detection found down here. And then finally, the early game towers. Now, I do want to point this out. There is no one solution to optimizing, and many ideas and approaches can work, but some tend to be more obvious. However, there's still a lot of different things that you could do. And for all of the ISAB viewers out there, I was able to salvage it with Crossroom Master, which is pretty funny, but that's beyond the point. This is obviously not black border friendly, and if you were doing this in the real game, you'd get a gold border and probably be screwed over every single time you try to black border this. So let's just move on to optimizing it and making the strategy good. So sometimes you will need multiple optimization attempts. And this may be really annoying to a lot of people, but even taking up to 3 optimization runs can cut down a lot of RNG and save a lot of time with your strategy and getting these expert black borders. So let's see what I decided to do. So I'm playing a new game, optimizing things up. I'm going to remove some of the unneeded early game by just going straight for my Dartling Gunner. So I'll get rid of that Druid that we saw before, but I'll keep that crossbow so we can just be safe with Oban. You need to find like a fair balance of RNG and optimizing like saving cost measures. For personal use black borders, you generally don't need to get rid of all the RNG, but near 0 RNG makes things pretty easy and you're guaranteed to get it within a few tries. So we're going to keep the Startling Gunner very effective on this map, so I'm not going to need to spend cash on the 130 Druid, which does save a little bit. We needed to save about 5k-ish if we wanted to get it before 87, but we might look at trying to get it there. So I'm going to also correct the crosspaths. I'm going to get the camo on my Dartling Gunner, so I'm not going to have to buy that signal flare there. This doesn't mean that you should buy camo crosspath on everything instead of getting a decamo option, only when it's literally just the exact same or more suitable to get the other crosspath. This is also fine. The 205 Bez is technically better, but in the mid game, 024 has much better consistency and knockback, plus will give you the camo, saving some money. So if you're just struggling to save up for the Bez, the 024 is definitely a good idea too. So we're going to be doing that. It's going to save us some money, make the mid game a little bit consistent. The late game will be a little bit worse, but I'm not really going to worry about that because Bez is a super strong tower anyways. I'm going to be going up for my Druid now, so we aren't still going to be weak to a bunch of ceramics, but I'm also going to do something where I will consolidate it later, and instead of having a bunch of random little towers, because I know I'm going to be saving up far, I might as well turn that into a bigger, stronger tower. So I'm going to be turning this Druid into a Ball Lightning Druid, so it really takes out all of the balloons on the inside better. And I'm also going to be out buffing the Druid and Oban later, so we just get some more damage and get some more support in there that will help them out. So I have my bads up, going to be doing a lot of damage. I get a mob glue up here just to slow down the mobs a little bit. One thing that I could consider is getting some more mob damage, which you will see later. Will be a little bit of an issue, but that's all right because you don't really have to nail your strategy down in one attempt. It can take multiple. But having the one attempt to really like see what's going on and be able to like get some ideas to fix it and then trying out those ideas definitely will get you a lot better at this game and will also, I guess, prove that you're a better player because you can fix a bunch of stuff that's broken. So moving on here, we have a pretty good setup. We have our Alk buff on these guys. The ball lightning's dealing with everything else. But also, one thing that you should try looking at is looking for a unique approach sometimes. You don't want to really get caught up like doing the same exact thing, because if you do the same thing over and over, you're pretty much just going to get the same result every time. So looking for something unique, something that is a interesting, different idea, but will also work. Just don't go trying nonsensical everything. So just look at your solutions, look at your options. Maybe you can see what other people did. And if you've been playing for a while, you know that in the past this worked, so maybe it will work this time. So some ideas in here definitely are unique. Some are not so unique, but they're basically just like cutting stuff and getting rid, making things a little bit more efficient. So you don't really have to be unique there if you're just getting rid of things. But as you can see from this optimization, we definitely have a lot of great optimizations here. So you definitely should be keeping a lot of these, but we're just a little bit short on mob damage, so we died. But as this is a test and it may not be your black border run yet, that's all right. You still got to figure some things out sometimes. So I decided to put relentless glue in there, see how things go, and it's going a bit better. Potentially, we could just look at the cost and seeing how much the absolute most we could spend is. You remember from earlier episodes how we do that. So things come out pretty good. We beat the round. Potentially a little bit of RNG there, but you can work on that. And unless you have a full, well thought out and optimized plan, there is no harm in resetting, because then you'll see what issues may come down later in the line. So I'm not going to restart here. I'm going to play again and see if we can get a good solution that works, and then play up the rest of the game, see if there's any issues in the late game, which I'll evidently find once I get the Bez, the Bloon exclusion zone. There are going to be no issues. So now we know that. We know that the late game is perfectly fine. Everything will work. We just need to get maybe a little bit more consistency in the late 80s. And then our strat's ready to black border. If we get good RNG, even this is the strategy right here is ready to black border. But we get it on 85. The Bez just destroys everything, and we're really good to go. Oben did a lot of work in mid-game with the ball lightning, pushing everything back, and we get a lot cheaper, a lot better defense. So thanks to the optimizations in the early game, the late game will be easy. And one interesting thing to think about is that it is pretty much always better to have an easier late game than an easier early game. So if you're looking for things to cut, try look to cut and optimize the early game a lot more, because you don't want to be going into a late game with less cash, less like abilities, less placements, and just less stuff in general. So if you're going to be playing expert chimps and making your own strategies, this is a huge thing. But moving on to part 11, which is strategy 5.
Hello everyone, and welcome to this strategy showcase where I will be showcasing the very strong Brit Drive strategy. I'll be showcasing it on Quad because Quad is probably its best map, and usually Brit Drive isn't used as a strategy itself. Usually it's used for some supporting DPS or mid-game, but on Quad you can use it as a whole strategy. You can do the same on Dark Dungeons as well. You probably can on a few other maps too, but Quad and Dark Dungeons are by far its best maps for experts. Or its best expert maps. Like, yeah, that's what I meant to say. Here I'm just going to be doing a pretty standard Quad early game to get through the early game, because this strategy doesn't really require any specific early game of sorts. So, yeah, that's nice. Four darts beating up to around 11 on Quad is pretty good. So the best heroes with this strategy are Geraldo, Gwen, and Pat. I'm just going to be using Gwen here because Geraldo's really boring and Pat just isn't as good on this map specifically. And Gwen just works as a, like, yeah, Gwen buffs the tack shooters enough, so yeah. So my early game of choice here is going to be a double pin sprockets. early game, which kind of works. As I said earlier, the strategy is not very early game specific at all, but I guess you could theoretically start to build into like the tack sprayer if you want. I'm not going to do that though because you just don't need to do that. So yeah, this is just a pretty normal quad early game. Spike factories are generally pretty weird as early game towers, but here they work because I'm going to be getting both of them to spiked mines later anyway, so why not? And here on round 31 I get my first of the 2 sprockets, and I'll be going for the other one now. Leads are probably not going to be an issue here because I have Gwen and a sniper. Unless, like, the first one just eats all of my spikes. That's nice. That just barely worked. Okay. Hopefully this still kills the camos. Okay, it did. Just barely, but it worked. If Gwen can get some cross-map snipes, that would be ideal, but hey, if it doesn't happen, that's fine as well, it seems. For round 40 here, I think the easiest thing to just do is a spiked balls. Unfortunate that I can't discount it, but if I have to get it, I have to get it. Cocktail should also help for the insides. That just barely worked. Okay, I did not expect that to work at all. So now is really where we start building into the strategy, because Brit Drive does require some pretty good cleanup. It deals with Moabs very well, but ceramics can be an issue for it. So some good options would be like a Storm Druid, or, as I'm going to use here, a Spiked Balls. Spiked Balls can also help clean up DDTs, and this strat is also not great against DDTs. Hopefully this sniper pops that. Okay, cool. Whoa. Okay, that got close. But it worked. So yeah, here I'm just going to be building into double spiked balls. And I'll alch buff both of them because that's just worth it. And I get this, village over, or I get bigger range on the village before getting the alchemist, so I can try and AMD isolate the spike factory for as long as possible, aka just have it so that it does not get, or so the AMD buff only goes on this because it helps it a little bit. Okay, so now with double alch buffed spiked balls, we can start building into Brit Drive, which is just, as the name implies, embrittlement plus overdrives. I'll start off by getting an overdrive on the bottom here, and then I'll get one on the top. The reason I get it on the bottom first is because topside is a bit stronger right now as it has Gwen. Ideally, you're not relying on a single spike factory for all of your camo detection, because this can happen sometimes. So, hopefully a jungle drums is enough to fix this. I'm going to assume it is. Yeah, it is. Just barely, but for black bordering maps, you don't need it to work. Like, you need it to just barely work. Okay, so now I'll be getting an overdrive on the top as well. Alright, so overdrive acquired, and now I will be getting the embrittlements. The best embrittlement spot for the bottom seems to be here, so I'll just buy it here. Embrittlement works very well with overdrive as it de-leads, because overdrive can't pop lead. It gives the damage debuff, which synergizes very well with overdrive's high projectile count and low damage. And another thing it does, which other things generally don't, is it can actually serve as some like pseudo bloon cleanup. Sometimes it works. It works way better on dark dungeons than it does here, but it can work as ceramic cleanup if you need it to, which is nice. But because that's not really super consistent on this map, I'm just going to be getting that's why I got the double spiked balls. If you're doing Brit Drive, ideally you have both embrittlements before round 63, because Ice Shards does very well against 63, so embrittlement just does even better. Embrittlements basically just completely murder 63, if you have them by then. Even though we have embrittlements and overdrives now, overdrives are still pretty weak without an alk buff, so it's important that we get that. I'll get it on the bottom one first, because that's just probably the easiest way to do it. For 63, even though I have double embrittlement, just to be safe, I'm still going to use Gwen's cocktail, and just Gwen abilities in general. Gwen's abilities do very well versus 63, so yeah, that's just a nice thing to watch out for. Alright, the reason I got a second overdrive first on the top instead of alk buffing my previous one is because if I wanted to alk buff this one, I would have had to place it in a different order, and yeah, that would have probably wasted a spot. And because now I have this, I should be able to get both overdrives with one stronger stim alchemist, so I will do that. Okay, so stronger stimulant should be affecting the overdrives. Okay, good. I'm glad it's affecting both of those and not the base Dart Monkey. So yeah. Alk buffed overdrives are very strong, especially with embrittlement. Now I'll just be getting my second overdrive on the bottom side to make both sides basically equal. Because Gwen doesn't do too much right now. Heated Up doesn't give a damage buff yet, so Gwen's side really isn't much stronger than the non-Gwen side. Now I'll be going for my main cleanup for this part, which is spiked mines on both sides. So yeah, I'll see you once I've afforded that. Even with the spiked balls, balloon cleanup can get pretty scary, so that's why I'm getting a spiked mines. Make sure to use your hero's abilities on tough ceramic rounds, because this strat isn't great at dealing with them. Yet, at least. So I get spiked mines number 1 on 77, and I should get the second one on 79. Alright, now I have the second spiked mines, and the game is basically over. Embrittlement overdrives with any form of cleanup are super strong. You can just see them tear apart an FB like that. And this isn't even nearly the end of our support. It's only round 80. We can keep spamming tons and tons of support. It's also very important to get primary training for your overdrives. Overdrives don't have great pierce, and P-training just gives them a lot more pierce. Well, it's just 1 pierce, but 1 pierce on a low pierce tower like overdrive actually goes a long way. Now I have 4 outbuffed overdrives. It's time to get some support. Some very good support with this setup is something like Relentless Glue, so that's what I'll be going for first. And then Moab presses, just pretty standard support. Alright. Dealing with cleanup will be a lot better now because Relentless helps a lot with that, and the ZOMG slow will be nice. Because of how overdrives work, it's actually best if things are on, like, directly above them, because all 32, not 32, I think it's just 16 for overdrives, but yeah, all 16 tacks will fire directly into a single target if it's right above it, so, or if the overdrive is right below the track. And with all of the buffs we're giving to overdrive and all of the debuffs we're giving to balloons, this is very strong. And the glues are good because it keeps Moabs in that area for longer, so it allows it to do way more damage. And now let's just get some Moab presses, because you still need something to help a little bit with stalling and ZOMGs. So yeah, the overdrives don't have too much pierce, as I mentioned a few times already, so they can't deal with too much at the same time, and Moab presses are good because the stalling they provide will split balloons apart and cause the overdrives to not have to deal with as much at the same time. Sorry. They'll still have to deal with the same amount of stuff, it's just separating it a little bit, which is good. The first DDT show up on round 90, and you will see this strategy's significant DDT weakness here. It takes a while for it to even kill them, mostly because our only source of decamo is the embrittlement, but shush, you can ignore that part. I could get more decamo for this to be better against DDTs, but embrittlement should be all you need, most of the time. With 2 presses on each side, basically all of our damage is complete. I will be getting a 3rd overdrive on the top to help out a little bit with round 100 and round 98 specifically, but I'll be getting that later. Right now, most of our defense is complete. You can watch our puny tack shooters with, and I quote, minimal support, destroy hard rounds like 94 here. Using Gwen's Firestorm ability can actually make them even better, because the heated up buff it gives them +1 damage, and these guys don't do too much damage, so +1 is huge on them. Because this strat struggles quite a bit to DDTs here, as you've seen already on 90 and 93, I'll just be getting a Moab Shredder on the bottom side, just to help clear up a few DDTs that aren't killed instantly by the Embrittlement Overdrives. Because some of them, the Brit will miss, and it'll have to go to the Moab Shredder. I'll just get the third Overdrive topside now, because I do in fact have the money. And give it its own 3-2-0 Alk. And just with this, it absolutely destroys any DDT round. Even though it isn't great versus DDTs, if we overload on DDT support, it can do that. And if you're struggling, you can still get like a Sabo. The setup does very well versus 100 and should only need a first strike in most scenarios, so you don't have to spend too much. You don't have to spend too much on 100 specifically, so you have more budget to buy other stuff. The strat is crazy, though, because most of our damage is concentrated in, like, a few $5,000 towers that we're just mega buffing. It's kind of silly. This does very well against single target, as you can clearly see here. 98 is probably the sketchiest out of any round with Brit Drive, but it will work. You just have to use Firestorm at like a remotely decent time. Because the ZOMGs are right above the tack shooters here, I will be using Firestorm to clear them out as soon as possible, and they're already dead. Bottom side will struggle a little bit more, though, because there's one less overdrive, and it also doesn't have Gwen support. Still works, though. For 99, just to be like 100% safe here, I will get a Cleansing Foam Engineer, just to decamo the DDTs a little bit faster and more consistently than the Embrittlement can. And I'll just be preparing my first strike for next round. I'll even have a little bit of money spare, so I could buy like a third overdrive on the bottom if I wanted to. Mob Shredder coming in clutch out here, okay. I'm not sure how that survived, but I guess it did. I probably should have cross-pathed this Alchemist, but if it works, it works. Yes, Gwen, the bad is very flammable. Will you shut up now and use Cocktail? You want to use Firestorm when the bad is like right over the overdrives or about to be right over the overdrives, because that will make them do the most possible damage. And boom. So yeah, this was the strategy showcase of Brit Drive with Gwen. This is mostly just a like quad being easy showcase, but yeah. This is the best quad strat though. So yeah, I hope you learned something from watching this strategy showcase.
Thank you, Dorio, for that one. And now we're going to be looking at part 12, which is round 100. So in the past, you might have thought of round 100 as the easy round. The bad comes in, and it loops all around, goes through the entire track, and every single time it's going to very handily be killed. The bad is rarely an issue on any map that is easier than like the harder advanced maps. But on expert maps, the bad is something else. It goes from being very easy to just taking that super short path and ignoring everything and just walking straight through. And it frequently can be a very tough round. So why is this? And the reason's pretty interesting. So when you're new, you tend to just spam a lot of tier 5 damage towers. And when you get better, you realize that this is bad and you need support. So a lot of times you're going to shift your raw damage into support, slow stalls. All of this gets your synergy up, but it doesn't do anything to round 100, which needs purely raw damage, so your damage falls off. And because of this, you're frequently forced to budget in a lot of money into round 100 damage just to beat the bad. And if you say, oh, just get a bunch of more raw damage instead of support next time, well, you're gonna die on like every round that isn't round 100. So basically you're in a pickle, and a lot of these expert maps just have really hard round 100s because you're forced to allocate resources away from raw damage. So this is where our round 100 towers come in, namely like First Strike, Sticky Bomb. The Spike Storms are really good. Just granted, you need to make sure the Spike Storm is compatible on the map that you're playing. But the annoying thing about some of these expert maps, particularly maps like Ravine here, is that even with all of these, you still aren't going to have enough damage to beat round 100. So when that happens, you're going to quickly realize that a lot of defenses need a lot of money to beat round 100. And instead of getting 2 first strikes, you can quite literally go all in and get a Moab Eliminator, which, as the name suggests, eliminates the Moab and is really effective at taking it out. It will take out the entire bad layer on Ravine Chimps, which is the notoriously hard round 100 map. So for about the same cost, you can get the Moab Eliminator, which also can be incorporated into your strategy to do some heavy damage, either that you're getting it to do more damage, or you can kind of replace some stuff like Moab presses and then sneak it into your defenses, saving money or consolidating towers. So like here, for example, this is a challenge that I did with Bomb Blitz on Sanctuary Chimps and 55,000 cash spare. So in order to do that, I went for the Moab Eliminator. It's a good strategy with Striker Jones itself, but even without it, it's still really good. And utilizing the Moab Eliminator for heavy damage will allow you to cut some support. So I was able to complete this challenge with a lot of cash spare, which was really, really nice. I was able to use it to take out a lot of the ZOMGs and the DDTs. And then ultimately, as you can see on round 100 here, the thing just went down. And you can also do this really cool trick with Moab Eliminator where it will soak through the ZOMG. So as you can see there, if there's nothing really attacking it, you can just pound the Eliminator button twice and it'll take things out. Alternatively, if you have Geraldo, you can use Genies on round 100, or you can do a Rejuve First Strike or a Rejuve Spike Storm. As you can see here, I just use some Genies, but also if you're using the Genies earlier, you just have to budget in a little bit to get 1 Spike Storm or 1 First Strike. And if you're bold and you're using a Zeely, which you are pretty cool if you're doing that, you can hex around 100 for about $16,000 to $18,000, depending on when you get a Zeely. So now let's move on to Geraldo items.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the part where I will explain Geraldo for you guys. Geraldo is easily the best hero for expert chimps at the moment, and he can trivialize basically any expert map with a wide range of strategies. But he can be kinda hard to figure out. That's what I'm here to do. I will try my best to explain every item, and then just show you how you would probably go about using Geraldo in a normal chimps game. First, we've got the shooty turret. The turret is a weird thing. It only costs $270, and has 2 damage and 10 pierce. It's pretty good for the early game because of these stats. They usually fall off at about round 35, and they start to become less impactful by this point, but are still good to have. They don't get upgraded for a while, so they kinda suck until you get the upgraded version. The upgraded version was considered trash for a while because people just didn't think it was good. But fairly recently, it was discovered that the upgraded turrets are actually insanely good for ceramic cleanup late game, but only the upgraded turrets are good. On expert maps, you will usually only unlock the level where they get upgraded in the late 60s, so watch out for it. Once you get the level, spam these turrets and make sure to concentrate them on one troublesome lane to completely wipe out any ceramic on that lane. They are practically free and can handle cleanup for a significant part of the game, and they're kind of insane. They're probably going to get nerfed at some point, but right now, they're very good. Spam these turrets. Next, we've got the stack of old nails. These nails are pretty good early game, and can be used to defend the exit to make sure that nothing leaks. They can't be your entire early game solution because you have such a limited amount of them, but using a few can be good and impactful. They get upgraded to silver nails in the mid game, but these kinda suck, don't use them. It's just not worth it. Once they get upgraded to nail mines though, they can tank a few ceramics and can help shut down any possible late game leaks. But they can only handle small leaks, and you can't rely on them to tank multiple Moabs. About 3 to 4 spikes can tank a DDT if you needed to. Pretty simple. They just catch leaks. And they can also somehow be used for really cheap bad damage if you really, really need it. It's only really used if you're very, very desperate, but they can work. Next, we've got the Creepy Idol. The idol blows back 25% of incoming balloons and temporarily stuns Moabs at higher levels. It absolutely sucks early game, just don't use it. Mid game, it starts to pick up, being useful on dense balloon rounds like 63, 76, and 78. And late game, it is an absolute menace. You can use it on 95, and it will last for every single difficult round remaining, or you can just use it during other times if you have to. It is actually kind of insane. It's such an incredible support for only 110, and it lasts 4 rounds, which is most of the difficult rounds in the late game for Chimps. It's really, really strong. Next, we've got Pickles. Pickles are weird, as nowadays they just aren't that good. They give a tower +1 damage and a bonus of +1 fortified damage at higher levels, but reduce the tower's attack speed by 33%. It is only worth using on towers that deal 2 or less damage if you don't care about the fortified bonus, but if the fortified damage is important, with a slight hit to non-fortified damage, they are worth using on towers with up to 3 damage. Early game, they are mostly good on subs or jungle druids. Mid game, they work on robos and bouncing bullets, I guess. They just aren't too great in this point in the game. But in late game, they can work very well on certain towers, like the things I mentioned earlier, robos, bouncing bullets, Comanches. They can work on a few things, quite a few things. It's very situational, but they can work well with a few towers, especially shrapnel snipers. Except top path, obviously. Next, we've got the camo pot. It just gives camo, always worth it, except not really. Just make sure that you don't waste it on 24. It's best to just use nails on 24 and only camo pot something on 33. Anyways, it just makes towers better against camo with no downside. Nice. Next, we've got the Sharpening Stone. It just gives +1 or +2 pierce at higher levels to sharp towers. No real downside. Just use it on sharp towers that do good damage like robos, Comanche, shrapnel snipers, or a bunch of other things. It used to be way better because it used to give +1 damage at higher levels, but it's still good. Next, we've got Glue. Glue is only slightly overpowered. It is absolutely insane early game, basically being able to slow any difficult round in the entire early game. Like, on some maps without alternating tracks, it can quite literally slow down 21 through 25, and then 31 through 35, which is a lot and very, very strong. They can also slow leads if you really need them to as well. They're just insane. It can also slow the round 40 inside, which is nice, and is a cheaper alternative to using the maelstroms, which can be a bit costly, but I'll get to that later. Mid-game, it's very, very good on ceramic rounds like 63, 76, and 78. That's about it. Sometimes you could use it to glue like BFB insides or something if you really need to. Not too often that you'll have to do that though. But then late game, they can be used near the end of the track for some ceramic slow if you need it, or you can manually place it on ZOMGs to slow them down if you don't have a Moab glue for whatever reason. Glue is just really, really broken right now, and it's probably going to get a nerf. I think you've noticed a pattern. Every single item has been kind of OP. Next, we've got the Hero Cape, which might be the most broken thing so far. Actually, no, probably not. But yeah, this thing is very, very good. It turns a Dart Monkey into a Super Monkey that you can only get to Tier 3, but that isn't really a big factor. It originally just seems like it makes it so you get slightly cheaper supers in slightly better spots, but no, it actually allows for some really, really silly things. You can pack together a bunch of dart monkeys and other towers, then turn the darts into supers to save a ton of space. And now you can discount all of your supers way, way easier. It's very nice. Kinda crazy, but then also the tier 3 restriction isn't really a limiting factor, because it's not very often when you're getting Tech Terror or Dark Champion. Next, we've got the Blade Trap. The Blade Trap is a weird one because it is really expensive for a short one-time use. It sucks in the early game because of this, except on round 40, where it is usually the safest and easiest way to deal with the ceramics from the Moab, but in most scenarios you will be able to get away with something cheaper, like pickles, sharpening stone, or you can just glue the insides as well. But if you really need all of the insides to just die with no issues, it just works. It is basically useless in the mid-game because glue and idols just do its job for cheaper, and it costs way too much for this point in the game where you save up lots of money and you need to be efficient with your spending. Sometimes on round 80, if you just don't have enough to deal with the insides of the ZOMG, the upgraded Super Maelstrom can be good, but usually other Geraldo items can do it for cheaper. Late game, it is mostly just used to clear the insides of ZOMGs very quickly, especially so if you use debuffs like Glue Storm, Embrittlement, or like Cripple Moab. Make sure that you are not using traps defensively, as in putting them at the end of the track to catch leaks. This is not worth the money, and sometimes doesn't even work properly. You want to be using them offensively, as in putting them in the middle of all the Moabs to make use of their incredibly high pierce. Maelstrom is very good, but usually other things just do its job for cheaper, so it's not the best item. Except you do have 4 of them, so that's nice. Next, we've got the Jerry Fire. With the recent, as of scripting this, duration nerf, the early to mid game of the Jerry Fire has gotten a lot worse, but it wasn't used much here to begin with. You only get it on round 38 on experts, which just isn't useful in most scenarios, because if you need the lead popping, well, you should already have enough lead popping because you beat 37, and 37 is like the exact same with leads compared to 38. And yeah, by that point you should have a finished early game setup. If you don't, you're definitely doing something wrong. I guess you could theoretically use it on round 40, but it just isn't worth it most of the time because you are wasting rounds, considering that rounds 41 and 42 are pretty easy. So you're only really using it for 43, because 44 is also very easy. Its only real early game usage is for the mid to late 40s, and maybe even early 50s when you don't have a solid mid-game setup yet, but since it only lasts 5 rounds and costs $650, it's a bit of a pricey option. Glue can just be used as a substitute in most scenarios, and even pickles can work on certain towers instead of a Jerry Fire. For the mid-game, it just isn't good, except applying it on round 59 can be useful if you need something to deal with camo leads, and it will even last through 63, helping you deal with the leads there as well. For the late game, it could just be pretty good. They can act as some cheap DPS when spammed, and they can be really, really strong on Shinobi buffed ninjas, or Poplust buffed druids, or other things that you're buffing significantly. Overall, Jerry Fires don't have too much of a use in the early to mid game, but late game, they can act as some cost-efficient DPS. Overall, pretty balanced item, and I'm pretty sure that's like one of the first balanced Geraldo items that we've talked about. Next, we've got the Bunny. The Bunny is really, really good, but for the purposes of black bordering, I wouldn't really recommend it. Why? Well, it's pretty simple. It is completely RNG based. Sometimes on multi-lane maps, it can just jump to different tracks where it isn't needed and cause you to lose. Sometimes it can just miss certain things. Sometimes you can just target the wrong thing, or just, yeah, as I said earlier, miss. If RNG is prevented enough, however, it can be very strong, even acting as a form of ceramic cleanup in the late game. It's probably the most cost-efficient mid-game tower if you can get it to not cause you to lose randomly sometimes. Next, we've got the Rejuve Potion. The Rejuve Potion literally just resets ability cooldowns for 2k. Basically, all of its use comes in the late game, where it can be used to reset the cooldowns of Glue Storm, Sabotage, First Strike, Spike Storm, and other such abilities. It is most notable on 95, where it is used to have Glue Storm or Sabotage up for every DDT, or use multiple Spike Storms. And 100, where it can be used to have multiple first strikes while only really having one, absolutely decimating the round for very cheap. Finally, we've got the Genie, which is arguably his most powerful item. It is only really useful in the late game, and you only unlock it at the point where you have a solid mid-game foundation, and it costs a whole 2k. It just isn't good mid-game unless you really, really need something to beat the early 80s to finish off a save-up, but late game it shines a lot. There are a few Genie setups that work. Depending on what you need, which can be found through testing, you can use one Genie on 94, one on 98, and then restock one for round 100. Or just two on 98. It really depends what you need. Gold Genies are very strong in the late game and provide incredible value for only 2k, turning rounds 98 and 99 into jokes if you already have a decent setup. All of these items are really strong, but how do we go about using them? Well, his restock is actually very important to know, and for most runs it will be on round 90, where his shop completely restocks, so you want to use most of his items, well, all the items that you're going to need before then. Sometimes you can delay Geraldo to round 30 to get it on round 92, which is actually the best restock for expert maps without delaying Geraldo too much.
And now let's go on to part also useful, but I forgot to mention this, which is abilities. So in late game, you're going to have a lot of abilities, and often it can be daunting to juggle these around. So how do I juggle around all of these abilities? And the answer is that you need to keep track of a lot of them, which can be hard to do, but you also need to make sure you know when to use them and when you should use them. So for example, some abilities like the Sabo, I'm going to want to have that up to kill the DDTs. So if I use it in 98, like the middle of 98, or even if the path is really short at the beginning of round 98, it will be down for when round 99 starts and the DDTs are going to go through. So you can just die if you use your abilities at the wrong time. So you need to be aware that there's some abilities that you need to wait until you use. So here on this example for this random challenge that I did a while ago, I need to hold a lot of my abilities and make sure that they're back for round 98 so I can beat round 98. And then I need to make sure that one snowstorm is up for round 99 so I can snowstorm the DDTs that come out there. So I'm going to be keeping that snowstorm right there. Use the snowstorm, pretty good. Everything works. And then I can beat round 100. But if I were using all my abilities on round 98, I would not have been able to beat 99. So if this is hard to keep track, you definitely will have your notes to help you out if you are making notes. So if you don't have many abilities, or you have some experience with using the abilities at the right time, you're comfortable knowing when you need to save your abilities, you can do it just by winging it. But if you have a lot and you're unsure and you're using your abilities at bad times, you're dying to other parts, you should just make some notes when to use the abilities, and that will help you beat the map a lot easier. Normally when I do it, I kind of just know like how fast rounds die, when my abilities will be back up. So I just wing it most of the time, but that's probably not the case for a lot of you guys. So like for example, in this run, I have a lot of abilities. I need to get them all up for 98, so I do that. I can use some stall strategies with the main Moab just on last, or you can have some like a downdraft or something to blow them back, something to hold them, and that will also help you get your abilities back if you're going to be stalling out for your abilities. But usually that's not something that you see in like regular black borders. For some expert maps, you'll see it a little bit, but usually I don't really see stalling out. It's a bit of a more advanced strategy, definitely. So if you're not comfortable with that, then you can definitely do these black borders without stalling stuff out. So just make sure that your abilities are up in time. You need to definitely don't use your Sabo on 90, like the middle of 98, and die to round 99. It's something that a lot of people do. Even I do that. So now let's move on to part 13, which is going to be the overview. I have this example. quad chimps that I'm going to be doing. I'm just going to be explaining how all these aspects, even every single aspect of this series, has helped me come up to this moment, and I'm going to black border quad chimps with my own unique strategy. Monumentous achievement, I know, right? But in reality, if you've been using like guides for expert maps and you can't really figure them out, and you could pull something off like this, that's really, really cool, because you pretty much did it. You beat like an expert map, which is really hard on Chimps mode, with your own strategy. So let's just see what I decided to do. I did the classic start, 4 darts, went into Soda, and I got a sniper just to leak up some stuff that's going through. So this is just pretty much the same starting positions for every single like quad chimps ever. You just get these darts. Sometimes people will read out another dart, but to be safe for the black border, I just got that extra dart. I'm going to be going for a Sentry Champion at the bottom, which is a very unique play, very cool tower. It's just one of those like mediocre towers, like not too good, not too bad, but you can do some stuff with it, so it will be able to work out well. We'll have Soda on the top doing a lot of damage up there, and I'm going to make the Soda side and the Sentry Champion side modular, so we'll be doing damage. We need to make sure that everything is balanced on both sides, as it is a modular strategy. You're definitely going to have to get used to modular strategies like this, because they will come up a lot on the harder maps and might be the most optimal play here. Well, here I am doing it. So I get the 2 spike factories at each side, keeping everything in optimal placements for quad, which will be the top right and bottom left. I'm going to upgrade my spike factories just so that they can get everything, and then we're going to have my Sentry Champion upgraded a bit, but we're not going to upgrade fully. We're going to need to make sure that I'll be able to take out that Moab at the top there. So that's going to be pretty big and pretty important. Unfortunately, as this is a harder map and the towers that I'm using aren't the greatest just to save up into, I'm going to be getting a bit of an early game carry, more like 40s to early 50s carry, which is going to be a deadly precision to take out the ceramics. A lot of times on these shorter maps, I know I didn't mention this tower, but a lot of times on the shorter maps, the ceramics can really be an issue if you're building modular strategy, or if you're on Ouch, for example. Ouch, you frequently will get this tower too, but the deadly precision just takes out all the ceramics, makes a lot of these rounds that I would otherwise die on a lot easier, like around 40, 43, 47, 49, just so I can get all my stuff up and I won't die to a bunch of ceramics if I do that. So basically, if I didn't get the deadly precision, I would not have my spike balls, alk buff, village buff up, and I wouldn't be able to take out some of those trickier rounds, which is definitely very good. So now I can take them out and I will win. Also, there was a few, 2 optimization attempts before this. I was cutting out the RNG, getting things a little bit better, so it's not like this is just a first try. If I was doing a better strategy, I probably could do it first try, but we're doing something unique. It needs a unique approach, and we need to figure some things out. So that was pretty good. Just 2 tries before. Definitely could do this black border in like half a day if you're really good, you know all your tips, and you go straight for it. So we got our spike balls up. That's just going to be holding everything in the back. Now we're going to need to get our damage up. So I'm going to grab my Sentry Expert up there. He's going to be doing all right. Soda's going to be doing good. Alk buffed Soda. So not too much of an issue going on down there. And then on the bottom side, I am going to get a little bit extra. We're going to be getting the spiked mines. I need to make sure I have camo detection so I don't die there too. That's something that I almost forgot to place. But basically, we're going to then be getting spiked mines up. And the spiked mines just gobble everything. A lot of times you'll just see 2 spiked balls, which is definitely very effective. Does a lot, but going for 2 spiked mines is, I guess, more effective. And it really helps out. It helps out a lot in the late game too, because it will still eat ceramics like it's nothing, even the super ceramics. So I get my spike mines on the bottom. That should help out a lot against 63, and I'll be going for a little more extra later on too. So I'm just going to speed through all these rounds. These rounds really tend to not have much interesting going on in them. the spike balls will just win. They'll clear up the mid game very easily, and I'll be saving up into my Century Champion. Some of the rounds were a little bit close. I didn't particularly have an issue with it, but if RNG comes to you, you might want to rethink about it, maybe add something, see if you can budget something else before the absolute minimum round is. My low power mode went on. But basically, at the start of 81, I got my Century Champion, so now the bottom side is going to have good damage, so let's get some support up there at the top. I'm going to be getting some Druid of the Storms. I think that's what he calls it. The Tornado Druid. They stole it from the Wizard back in BTD 5. But what that's going to do is going to put off a lot of pressure on these spike mines, because if the mob comes, the mob's going to pop and drop all of its ceramics into the spike mines, which will take out a lot of spikes. Often this can hold, but if there's a lot, it can't. But what the Druid does is that it has the tornado, sends the tornado out, and sends the ceramics back. So the ceramics are going to go back up to wherever like Soda or Century Champion is, and they'll die because they tend to not really get Pierce Cap, especially in these modular strategies. But even on single lane maps, it's still really good. So the ceramics will be sent out, and there will still be more spikes. So if more stuff comes to leak, it will be able to deal with it really well. So it really bolsters the effectiveness of the spike balls. So having something to stop the ceramics is definitely really, really good here. I'm just getting a little bit more damage with the embrittlements, getting the mob glues because they're pretty good. And then I'm pretty good with DDTs with this strategy. Double spike mines on each side, and Soda and the Century Champion, they'll deal well with DDT, so I'm not going to really need to get a Sabo or anything like that to take that out. But I will be getting a mob glue just for some of these mob waves. I guess it also makes the DDTs easier too, but I will be needing a lot of heavy damage because we are weak to that. We also are weak to round 100, but we will figure that out later. Luckily, round 100 on quad is easier than other maps, so you can get away with like a single spike storm even in this setup. You'll see I do round 100 with just one spike storm, but the ZMGs on the other hand, they are not so hot. The ZMGs are often really hard. They come out and then they just get reinforced immediately later with the other ZMGs coming out from the other lanes, and all they want to do is just leave. So there's ZMGs coming from everywhere, so we're going to get a bunch of mob presses to just push them back. I'm going to be getting 024 because we are split up on our paths, so if Pierce isn't an issue, the 024 is better. Otherwise, on like all other single lane maps, you're going to want 204 because you're just going to Pierce Cap otherwise. So we're going to get that. We are doing very well. Round 98 comes here with all of our mob presses, with our cleanup from the spike mines and the tornado druids. We're going to take everything out. We're going to do the damage. We'll use our abilities at good times to take out the DDTs. And then on round 100, all we need to do is get one spike storm, alch buff it. And as you can see, the round 100 on this map is really long. You can even double FS, so you can get away with really having like no round 100 damage. But just use that spike storm, and should be able to take it out. Luckily, I don't need to first strike time because we have the mob presses that will just hold the ZMGs back, and we can win. So that is a black border with a cool, unique strategy, completely formulated, and I did not take this from a guide. So all in all, now that this is the end of it, if you paid attention and you really learned some cool, unique strategy, some good tips, you'd be able to do that. You'd be able to black border expert maps with your own strategy. You'd also have a really good understanding of not only Chimps, but just the game mode in general, why things work, how to make things better, and that's just pretty cool. So basically, it's over. That's pretty much all of the tips and example strategies that I have to offer with the series. So now I guess it's part 14, which is party time. So overall, I just want to say a big thanks, congratulations, and I want to give a thanks to the other creators who helped me out, which is H-Bomb, Flared Bloons, Dorio, Derp Skull, and Frosty. Thanks for watching the series. I'm super happy with the outcome. There's so much information, and it helps so much people, and I really thank you for watching, and if you want to thank me too, you can do that simply just by liking, subscribing, checking out my other videos. I have a ton of cool chimp strategy videos that you might find interesting if you find some of this stuff interesting too. Also, on top of that, I mostly really do challenges, but I want to kind of push my channel forward going on in the future and doing tips and stuff. So watch out for that. And if you really enjoyed the series, it would be pretty cool if you joined the channel member or leaving a donation if you want to. That would be pretty cool and would make my day. So anyways, that's pretty much it, and that is how you black border every single map in BTD 6. Thanks for watching. If you want to help out the channel, you can check out these new videos, like and subscribe for more content, support the channel by becoming a member, and joining the Discord to chat with the community. Bye!